This is Jazz Casual. I'm Ralph Gleason. You've been listening to the music of the Dave Brubeck Quartet with Paul Desmond on the alto saxophone, Gene Wright on bass, and Joe Morello drums, and Dave Brubeck on piano. About 10 years ago, Dave Brubeck, then an up-and-coming young musician, wrote an article in Downbeat magazine in which he discussed the future of jazz and said many of the things that he thought we might expect in the ensuing decade from jazz music. And we have him on the program now, and I hope that we're going to be able to find out. Dave, good to see you.
Hi, Ralph.
We were just talking about the article that you did in Downbeat about 10 years ago, in which you discussed the future of jazz music. Has it worked out like you thought it would?
Well, it's coming along very well. I think the two things I stressed at that time are the two things that I would stress today, and the two things I've worked the hardest on in the ensuing 10 years.
What are they?
Well, I brought up polytonality, that I thought we should be using more adventurous harmonic changes, and one good way to do that in jazz, which offered the musician much liberty without breaking the fundamental rules of jazz, was to keep the basic chord progressions of any standard tune. Say a pianist would play in this key in one hand, but in this hand play in a new key, a different key, and he'd be getting all his altered chords that way. And yet he wouldn't be throwing his bass player, because this is the hand that the bass player is going to work with, wouldn't be throwing the other musicians too much, and yet he could become very adventurous. Now, rhythmically, I talked in terms then of doing things polyrhythmically. The harmonic approach was polytonality. Rhythmically, I wanted to do things polyrhythmically because I thought jazz was much too tame. And the way I wanted to set up the group was that the drummer would be playing one rhythm, the bass player another rhythm, and Paul and I could play in either of those rhythms or a new rhythm. Now, we've done this, and we're doing it better now than we did 10 years ago. And the album Time Out was the first album where we took a whole series of time signatures different than we're used to playing in. And the next album, current album, is called Time Further Out.
Well, now you just did the take 5 from Time Out.
And it's very interesting to see that that is now being accepted by the public.
Well, now how did you use this in take 5, for instance, which you just finished playing?
Well, we recorded that about 2 years ago, and it's a tune written by Paul Desmond. And that was where we were going to take different time signatures than the usual jazz. Now, the idea was that jazz used to challenge the public and make them think in terms more advanced rhythmically than they were used to thinking in. In the 20s, it was hard to get a group of people to clap on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This was difficult. Well, we haven't gone much further. The public is ready for something new because everybody that listens to jazz can clap on 2 and 4. At this period, 30 years is long enough to be stuck there. So it's time that the jazz musicians take up their original role of leading the public into more adventurous rhythms.
And you think this is what is now going to take place?
Well, the Take 5 is proof of it. After all, the kids are tired of rock and roll, too. And yet they can dance in 5/4 time.
Well, now, are you doing this in any other way with other numbers that you've written and that you're recording and playing?
We have, we're the only group that I know of. We can play an entire concert and not play in 4/4 or even in 3/4.
And most jazz is played in 4/4 time.
Most jazz is, and more they're getting to be jazz waltzes, but we have 4 things in 5/4 time. And things like the Blue Rondo a la Turk using 9/8, a thing called Unsquare Dance that's in 7/4 time, and there's another thing in 7/4 that's very difficult to play in. 3 to get ready and 4 to go was the idea using 2 bars of 3/4 followed by 2 bars of 4/4. Now many groups do these things and they play the first chorus that way and then they
go into
cop
4/4,
out. Then they go into 4/4. In our group, if we set up this pattern, we're going to stay in the difficult time signature throughout and improvise. Just like you heard Paul just now, he was in 5/4 time. He can probably play in 5/4 better than any musician in the world, maybe as a horn man, and Morello's got it sewed up as a drummer.
Well, now, can you show us some of these different rhythmic things that you're going to do?
Yes.
Tunes, what tunes would you play for us now?
I'll do a thing called a Raggy waltz. Now, the rag was the first written form in jazz. And they used to play 1, 2, 3 against 4 over here. Now, we're going to start with the idea we're going to play a waltz and put 1, 2 on this side.
All right.
And we'll combine the rag and the waltz. Now, we might get into tempos of 3 or 4 or 2. We're free to do anything we want as long as we don't break the basic idea.
Okay, well, we'll listen to that. Thank you, Dave. This is going to be Raggy Waltz, the Dave Brubeck Quartet, and I urge you all to listen and watch closely and see if some of the things that Dave just described to us turn up in this tune as the Dave Brubeck Quartet plays it. Raggy Waltz.
Yeah. Now that's the idea when you get into 2 or more tempos at the same time, because that came off kind of like I hope it should or hope that it will. And if you were counting, which we weren't, because you can't count up here, you either know what you're doing or not, all you can hope to do is come out at the downbeat together. Now, we'd like to do another thing in 5/4 time. This is called Castillian Blues. And if we hadn't played other tunes in 5/4, we'd have a lot of trouble in playing in this time signature. But it's because we've done the Time Out album that we can do the Time Further Out album. And because of that album, we can do an album that will be out in about 1.5 years called Time and Space, where I've written a thing in 10/4, Paul's written a thing in 11/4. Now, these tunes are like always a point of departure for something that we hope to be more natural for us and easier for us to do at a later date. This is called Castillian Blues. you can hear another tune in 5/4. We have 3 more that we do simply because we wanted to get away from the 4/4 that jazz is usually played in. There's quite a bit of 3/4 going around these days. And we have one now we'd like to do for you called Waltz Limp. It's from a ballet I'm doing where the girl loses her ballet slipper. She starts to limp. The corps de ballet follows her around, limping. They create a new dance. Now, we used a 9/8 time that I would like to demonstrate a bit because it's quite different than most jazz. You count it 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3, which totals 9. It's a Turkish rhythm that most of the people in Turkey have no more trouble with than we have with rock and roll here. It's called Blue Rondo a la Turk.
I don't think that we ever need worry about jazz in the future being dull. It's certainly never going to be dull as long as we have bright, provocative, and courageous musicians like Dave Brubeck, who are willing to take chances and to experiment, because experimentation has always been and always will be a major part of jazz music. And one of the most interesting things about Brubeck down through the years has been his willingness to experiment. Unlike some musicians who have gone conservative as they've been more successful, Brubeck has always been willing to take chances. And he remains today a very provocative, experimental, and interesting musician, and I hope we can hear more of him right now.